What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and today we're going to discuss the main villains of Resident Evil 4 and how I would like to see them presented in the Resident Evil 4 remake. The main villains in Resident Evil 4 are part of what makes Resident Evil 4 unique and memorable. First up, Bitteros Mendez, aka the Big Cheese. Mendez is who I associate with the first part of the village in Resident Evil 4. He is very tall and towering and has a very intimidating presence. Now here in the remake, it looks like they just added a little top hat on him, like they always like to do. Capcom likes top hats for some reason. But this begs the question, will he be more of a stalker type enemy in the remake? It could be a small segment of the game since we defeat him in the original just before the castle. But he also has a false eye in the original that helped us open up the main gate to the castle. So I wonder if that will return, but it's also something that could easily be changed this time around. In the original Resident Evil 4, Mendez was originally ordered by Sadler to capture Luis, who was in the village doing research on the sample undercover as an investigator. This was of course before Leon came through and ruined the plans for the Big Cheese.
Perfect. The Big Cheese.
We also got to see his house in Resident Evil 4, and this is the same house where he comes across Leon in the upstairs and says that he carries the same blood as him, because Leon is injected with the parasite. And then Ada, of course, shoots him in the back, and he jumps out the window. I also hope to fight Mendez in the barn as it burns down, because I always love the whole vibe of that fight personally. I can't wait to see his return. Ramon Salazar. Inheriting the castle at a younger age, Salazar is a 20-year-old who runs the show over in the castle in the second part of the game. His extensive research with Sadler on the Lost Plagas parasite granted him a specifically modified dominant species Plagas, which gives him full control of his body. He also formed all of the cultists that are inside his own castle. This isn't a castle you can get through quickly. This is a longer segment of the game, and I love it. Leon and Ashley are forced into the castle after a mob of enemies closes them in. I always love Salazar's personality and how cocky he is about Leon stepping into his domain and the consequences that will follow. Little does he know, Leon is not messing around. Towards the end of the castle in the original, Salazar uses one of his Vertigo bioweapons with his transformation before you actually fight the wall of a boss that is Salazar. I always liked this fight, but I always hated the QuickTime events during the fight, not to mention the one-shot kill that can happen to Leon if you're not ready for it. Maybe we can see the fight in a different area, and maybe a little redesign of the final form of Salazar. That's something I wouldn't mind. You don't have to redesign it or change anything drastically, but if he's going to be a part of the room like he was before, maybe it could be more like the final form of Nemesis in Resident Evil 3 Remake. Jack Krauser. Leon's old comrade from 2002, from Operation Javier. This was showcased in the spin-off Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles released on the Wii. I also liked his character, but it would be cool if we dive a little more into his character's history, especially with Leon. I know the community can be split on this because some want him cut completely, or there's some people that want more added to his character and even his boss fight. I obviously would love to see more of Krauser, and I might come out liking him even more at the end of the remake if they do something well with it. The first interaction between Leon and Krauser with the QuickTime knife fight should be here, but without the QuickTime events. I think everyone would prefer a cinematic over QuickTime events in 2022. Now, with Dr. Luis Serra being an investigator who was trying to find out more about the Plagas and how to destroy them, he was actually infected with it and was able to destroy it, which is why he helps Leon. But when he sends over this email and research, Ada Wong discovers the email, who then sends this information to none other than Albert Wesker, and then Albert Wesker sends Jack Krauser in to retrieve the dominant Plaga sample. So that is what's behind Jack Krauser's motivation as well. The fight itself that happens at the top of the tower, in that little area, can be reconstructed. Maybe they can change the order of how events actually happen and how you get the pieces. That all leads up to one final fight on the top of the tower. But this time, you can't just knife Krauser. Once you get the trick down, it's pretty easy to learn how to do that in the original game. They can make his final transformation look a little bit different and also make it to where it's a little bit harder. It'd be really cool to see how that unfolds. I'm really looking forward to seeing Jack Krauser come back. And next up, we have Osman Sadler. Referred to as Lord Sadler, He is the leader of the neo-pagan cult Los Illuminados, and claimed his space in Spain in the early 2000s with the Plaga parasite as his plans that included complete control and world domination. His powers showcase how once he has someone under the control of the parasite, he can control them within seconds, and this shows just how strong he really is. Now, he does appear in Resident Evil 4, but he appears in the background and in some cutscenes throughout the game, and of course in the radio transmissions, until the very end when we finally see him in his final form and Leon and Sadler come face to face just before the final boss fight. Not sure if they're going to change his final design, but I always liked his spider-looking design with the eyes on the legs to jump on the back and stab it right in the eye in the middle. That's such a badass thing that Leon does with the knife, and they can even make the stage grander in scale, and the final stage itself will most likely be laid out completely different, and I can't wait to see what they come up with. And we will patiently wait to see more Lord Sadler. And last but certainly not least, Albert Wesker. Now, Albert Wesker may not be present a lot in this game specifically, especially as the main villain, but he is the main villain in the Resident Evil franchise, and he does appear in the original Resident Evil 4 on the separate way scenario that is Ada's side story. We all love Wesker, and we know he's been completely absent in the franchise since his death in Resident Evil 5. Seeing Wesker and the RE engine all redesigned would be a real treat for fans. But will he have a bigger role as a villain? It is hard to tell because it's something that they can easily change and just not include, but I'm curious if he still has connections with Ada and he still sends Jack Krauser in. Even if this ends up being more of the behind the scenes like in the original Resident Evil 4, I'll be happy with that just to see his return. So that is a look at the main villains in Resident Evil 4, and what villains are you most excited for to return in the remake? Stay tuned for more videos covering the bosses in between the segments of the game, like Del Lago, El Gigante, Vertigo, and U3. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe as the road to Resident Evil 4 Remake continues. A big shout out to everyone that supports me on Patreon and YouTube memberships. YouTube members grants you access to voting on content with custom badges and emojis for chats. Patreon gives you the same voting privilege, but even more. Gain access to uncut recording sessions, weekly exclusive Patreon shows, and live hangouts on Patreon. Tiers start at just $1. Thank you so much for your support, and I will catch you next time.